Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you this evening: a night of relative calm at the border after 4 days of heavy artillery firing as India and Pakistan agree to halt military action. The three defence forces hold a joint press conference, say all military bases are fully operational and ready for any future mission if the need arises. Prime Minister Modi chairs a high-level meeting with top ministers on the India-Pakistan border tensions. Sources say certain political decisions were taken in that meeting. DGMOs of both nations will hold talks later this evening. Indian airspace is now fully open for commercial operations under instructions from the Air Force. Airports Authority of India cancels the notice to airmen that closed 32 airports across the country in the wake of Operation Sindoor. There's a 3-month breather in the China-US trade war. After 2 days of meetings in Geneva, China agrees to cut tariffs on US imports to 10% for 90 days. The US proposes cutting duties on Chinese goods to 30% from the 145% earlier. Global markets cheer the de-escalation in the trade war between the US and China. The stopping of hostilities between India and Pakistan add to the relief across Asia. Indian equities see their best day in 4 years. The sensex and the nifty jump 4% each. President Trump promises to bring down prices of prescription drugs in the US by 30%, says he will sign an executive order to bring in what is called the most favored nation pricing for drugs, says the policy will see the US paying the same price as the nation that pays the lowest price for any drug. Even as Japan's Sumitomo Mitsui awaits RBI and CCI nod to buy 20% Yes Bank stake from SBI and other banks, Yes Bank CEO Prashant Kumar tells CNBC TV 18 that this deal can improve the bank's rating, adding that it would give Yes Bank opportunities for lower-cost funds and lending and fee-based income. Virat Kohli retires from Test cricket, saying it's not easy, but it feels right, brings the curtains down on an illustrious 14-year career. The fourth highest Indian run scorer in red ball cricket, Kohli also signs off as India's most successful Test captain. The top story this evening: a night of relative calm at the border after 4 days of heavy artillery firing as India and Pakistan reached an understanding to halt military action. Now, Defence Ministry sources say that the night remained largely peaceful across Jammu and Kashmir and other areas along the international border. The Director General of Military Operations of both countries will hold talks later this evening. Ahead of the talks, Prime Minister Modi chaired a high-level meeting with Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar, NSA Ajit Doval and all three service chiefs on the India-Pakistan tensions. Sources say that certain political decisions were taken in that meeting. Now, the three defence forces held a joint press conference and showed the damage caused to Pakistan's air bases. They revealed that India used a multi-layered air defence system to minimise damage from Pakistan's attacks. Air Marshal A.K. Bharti said all of India's military bases continue to remain fully operational and are ready for any future mission should the need arise. He added that the Indian Air Force did not strike Pakistan's Kirana Hills. Take a look.
Is there a confirmation that we actually hit Kirana Hills, or we were careful of not to do any such thing? Thank you.
Thank you for telling us that Kirana Hill houses some nuclear installation. We did not know about it. Okay. And we've not hit Kirana Hills, whatever is there. Okay. I did not brief in my briefing yesterday. Thank you. All our military bases, all our systems, continue to remain fully operational and ready to undertake any future missions should the need so arise. It is a cat and mouse game, and you have to be ahead of the curve to beat your adversary. So that is what is going to happen. So if you ask, was this different? Was this engagement different? Definitely it was different. And a lot of new aspects have come out, but we were prepared for it, we were trained for it, and we were equipped for it.
Well, that is the Indian Air Force, and the Indian Army also said the situation in Jammu and Kashmir remains largely peaceful. Network 18's Ishan Bani gets us more on the situation in Srinagar. Ishan.
There has been no ceasefire violation or any drone movement that has been directed in Kashmir or Jammu, both on the line of control or on the international border. People have been living in peace and they haven't heard any blasts taking place in the skies of Srinagar or any other parts where attempts were made to penetrate through the Indian defense system, particularly on the Srinagar airport, which is also a defense airport where the Indian Air Force also operates. or in Avantipora airfield, where the Indian Army's largest air base is located to guard Kashmir Valley. There were also attempts made to ensure that they hit through drones several other areas and important defense establishments, even in Baramulla, a frontier district, in Kupwara, again a frontier district, but all of them were successfully thwarted by the alert and vigilant Indian Army and the defense system on the ground. What we also know so far is that with peace returning to these areas, there has been a sigh of relief that the people living in the border areas are feeling, but say many of them, more than 50,000, have been uprooted from their homes and leaving their everything behind, and have now started to live under a temporary shelter and those houses provided by the government for a while.
Ishan Vani, many thanks. Reporting there from Srinagar, relative calm overnight and peace this morning. CNBC TV 18's Newsbreak now confirmed the government has fully opened Indian airspace for commercial operations. A new notice to airmen has been released for the opening of all the 32 airports that were directed to shut amidst the India-Pakistan conflict. However, sources indicate that airlines may take a while to resume flight operations, as they will have to inform passengers in advance. Madhya is standing by with more. Madhya, you broke this story. It is now official. 32 airports that were closed for civilian operations now will be back in use for civil aviation.
Absolutely. CNBC TV 18 had reported in the morning that new NOTAMs, which is notice to airmen, will be issued to withdraw the cancellation of civil flights at 32 airports. We were informed by airport officials in the morning about the reopening of these airports, and it was later confirmed by the government that NOTAMs to reopen 32 airports have been issued, which means all the airports across Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Himachal, Rajasthan and Gujarat that were closed due to military action will now open for civil flights. But the reopening of airports doesn't mean all flights will resume immediately today. If you look at the map that we captured from live tracker flight radar 24, the airspace in these states looks the same as it was in the last 5 days. No flights at the moment in Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal and Punjab, and only few flights in the interior parts of Rajasthan and Gujarat. These airports were closed for operations since the 7th of May. The closure was extended till the 15th of May, and airlines had cancelled flights to these airports till the 15th of May. Now, Indigo and Air India have announced they will progressively commence operations on the closed routes. Since airlines have to plan in advance, open bookings, inform passengers, some flights may resume, may not resume today, but most likely normalcy in flight operations at the affected routes may take some time even after reopening of these airports. But this is clearly an indication of at least normalcy returning. If we look at the Pakistani airspace, it has many international flights flying over its airspace. Many Gulf airlines like Fly Dubai, Fly Nas, Iraqi Airways and Saudi are flying to and from Pakistan to Karachi to Lahore. It is important to note that Pakistan continues to close its airspace for Indian airlines. India too has closed its airspace for Pakistani carriers. So the rerouting of international flights by Indian carriers will continue, and complete normalcy may take more time.
That is right. Indian airspace still closed for Pakistani carriers and Pakistani airspace closed for Indian carriers. But at least as far as the 32 domestic airports are concerned, they can now start to resume operations for civil aviation. Madhya, many thanks for joining us. Let's go across to our colleague Parikshit Luthra to take us through more of the details that were provided by the armed forces in today's briefing on the retaliation during Operation Sindoor and the assets that India managed to go after and successfully hit at. Parikshit.
Well, over the last 3 to 4 days, India launched Operation Sindoor, which is not over. And since 7th May, India has launched several military operations and economic actions against Pakistan, and they have had a strong impact. Now, Operation Sindoor began on the intervening night of 6th and 7th May. We had precision missile strikes on 9 terror camps in Pakistan on the 7th of May. This included places like Bahawalpur, Murid-Ke, Muzaffarabad, which are command centers of the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Lashkar-e-Toiba. We targeted terror camps which had actually trained terrorists like Ajmal Kasab and David Headley as well. More than 100 terrorists were killed, including those involved in the IC-814 hijacking. Now, how did we retaliate to Pakistan's drone strikes and airstrikes on 26 locations in India? Pakistan carried out retaliatory drone and missile strikes on 7th, 8th and 9th of May. India launched armed drones to destroy Pakistan air defense systems. The Indian Air Force neutralized air defense system of Lahore and damaged Pakistan's HQ-9 system. The HQ-9 system has been provided by the Chinese. We use the formidable S-400 air defense system, the Akash system, the L-70, the Shilka, the Barak air defense weapons to intercept Pakistani drones and fighter jets as well. In fact, Pakistani fighter jets were shot down by the Indian Air Force. We struck at major Pakistani air bases. Yes, India struck air bases on the 9th and 10th night with BrahMos supersonic missiles, which have a range of 260 to 290 kilometers. This is a first for a country to attack air bases of any nuclear-powered nation. 11 air bases were attacked in just 3 hours. This included Noor Khan, Rafiki and Murid. And these were air bases near Rawalpindi, the military headquarters of Pakistan. We struck at ammunition depots and the base of F-16 and JF-17 fighters in Sargodha and Bhulari. These were badly damaged, and attack on Bhulari air base killed over 50 people, we're told. And 20% of Pakistan Air Force infrastructure was damaged by Indian strikes. Now, continuing with Operation Sindoor, this was not just a military operation. This was a diplomatic, political, military and economic operation. Let's list out some of the economic measures that were taken. India suspended the Indus Waters Treaty, which is a lifeline for Pakistan. 80% of Pakistan's agriculture and 93% of total water use in Pakistan depends on the Indus Waters system. And the suspension could actually worsen Pakistan's fiscal and foreign exchange crisis. What is India's message? India's message is that blood and water cannot flow together. All trade with Pakistan has been stopped, and this includes onion exports and imports of cement and textiles, all put to a stop. All Pakistani visas cancelled. Citizens have been sent back. So very strong measures being taken, and none of this changes. The DGMO talks that happened, the understanding reached to stop firing, have peace at the border, has nothing to do with the economic measures that we're taking. This is unconditional. We will continue to suspend the Indus Waters Treaty. We will continue taking economic measures to hurt Pakistan's economy. All of that does not change. And we've also sent out a message that any further ceasefire violation from Pakistan will be met very strongly, and any act of terror will be treated as an act of war.
Parikshit, many thanks. And of course, an important update for all of our viewers. The Prime Minister Modi, will address the nation close to 8 p.m. tonight. That is the expectation, but the Prime Minister will address the nation at 8 p.m. tonight. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. We will bring you his address. Now, the US and China have agreed to drastically pause tariffs for a period of 90 days. This announcement was made after 2 days of trade negotiations between American and Chinese officials in Geneva. As per the agreement, the US will temporarily lower its overall tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% to 30%. China will cut its levies on American imports from 125% to 10%. Both countries will establish a mechanism to continue discussions beyond the 90-day period. Listen in to what has been arrived at between the US and China. Here's the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
We have reached an agreement on a 90-day pause and substantially moved down the tariff levels. Both sides on the reciprocal tariffs will move their tariffs down 115%.
And we were able to have very constructive and positive conversations with our Chinese counterparts, who clearly came to deal this week. The rapid nature that we were able to conduct and conclude these discussions is a testament to mutual understanding and mutual respect between the Chinese and U.S. sides.
Over the past 3 months or so, the global trade war, which was provoked or initiated by the United States, has caught global attention. China's position towards this trade war has been clear and consistent, and that is, China doesn't want to fight a trade war, because trade wars produce no winners. But if the US insists on forcing this war upon us, China will not be afraid of it and will fight to the end.
So a 90-day window there, both sides cutting tariffs very significantly. Prashant joins us now with more on this deal that's been arrived at between the US and China. Prashant, at the end of it, over the last few weeks, the tumultuous time that the world has gone through, only to come back to this.
I mean, you're back to basically April 2nd levels, Shireen. But big headlines on US-China trade front. And this one's actually bigger than what was expected. Actually, this is better than the most optimistic expectations. Both sides have hit the pause button for now. Now, the US has slashed tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% all the way down to 30%, but only for 90 days. So that's why it's a pause. China is also cutting tariffs on American goods from 125% to just 10%, again, for 90 days, the pause. Now, these are massive reductions for sure. So while 30% is the number in all headlines, the real number markets are watching for is 38.6%. What is this number, 38.6%? That's the effective tariff which US will impose on Chinese goods. I spoke with economists at Citi, and they calculate that after you add back the legacy tariffs, the tariffs which were imposed by Trump himself and he's inherited in his second term, and then you subtract the exemptions which were provided for consumer electronics, Chinese consumer electronics, which came in earlier, that number comes to 38.6%. What's next, right? I mean, I think that's the other question which many are asking. The fentanyl tariffs, which is at 20%, and that's very much still there, could be the next lever in this negotiation. It is widely seen as a low-hanging fruit for both sides to keep the momentum going. We even heard Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, talk about this in terms of how willing China was, how open China was about helping US in this regard. The other thing, from a Chinese financial market perspective, is that people were expecting government stimulus to buffer the impact of this trade war. Well, perhaps that will be delayed now. The Chinese government, in all likelihood, will be in a wait-and-watch mode. Now, the cuts matter to China. It matters to US as well, but it matters to the rest of the world as well. Chinese exporters now have more breathing space. The tariff gap between China, basically the tariffs on Chinese goods and other trading partners, the rest of the world, has narrowed significantly, giving them more room to compete on global pricing. And I think as we go through the next couple of days and weeks, we'll hear more about this from industries and specific companies. Are there any U-turns we should expect, or will these announcements now stick in terms of what's being done? Well, that depends on how well Trump is able to sell it to his voters. Republicans, Make America Great Again, that crowd, that constituency in the United States. Remember that China hasn't really put any big new commitments on the table yet for getting these lower tariffs, or at least we've not seen them being announced publicly. That's the political risk back home in the US. Will Trump be seen as compromising too much too soon? If that narrative starts to take hold, I think expect a much tougher approach in the next round, because they'd want to be seen strong and having an upper hand. There is, of course, also history which cautions us. Back in 2018, during Trump's first term, the US and China agreed, like today, to a 90-day suspension of tariffs. While the deadline back then was extended after the expiry of the pause, the dispute, as we all know, escalated between both countries. So yes, while, for now, Shireen, it does feel like tensions have peaked out, and I think global trade and, of course, global markets will heave a big sigh of relief, and they should. History tells us with Trump, nothing is off the table. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned for what comes our way. Back to you.
Well, we most certainly will have to stay tuned and don't take anything for granted. That's a note of caution there, Prashant, but many thanks. But for now, markets around the world, including the US futures, reacting very, very positively to that breakthrough on the trade front that's been arrived at. But the big story and a quick programming note, as I mentioned, the Prime Minister will address the nation around 8 p.m. today. This will be the Prime Minister's first public speech since Operation Sindoor began last week. Remember, in the last 2 days, since the time that there has been a cessation of hostilities that has been announced, we've seen President Trump tweet. We've seen Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, tweet. We've seen the Pakistan Prime Minister tweet, but we have not seen any response from Prime Minister Modi, and it will be crucial to watch what the Prime Minister says in his address to the nation that's coming up at 8 p.m. today, whether or not he acknowledges in any form or fashion the role, if any, that the US played. India, remember, has not acknowledged the role of any third party in the mediation, said that this was done at the level of the DGMO after Pakistan reached out to India. Pakistan, of course, has thanked President Trump profusely, the Pakistan Prime Minister doing so in his speech as well as on Twitter. India has so far maintained silence on any role being played by the US. There has been no mention of that whatsoever, so it will be interesting to see whether the Prime Minister brings that up today. The Indian market recording its best day in 4 years. The Sensex and the Nifty up 4%, each ending at 7-month highs. The BSE-listed companies adding a market cap of nearly 16 lakh crore rupees today. That's the Nifty 900 points higher. Look at the Sensex, 2,975 points, almost 4% gain coming in there. The Nifty Bank up 3.5%, and it's a 4% up move there on the Nifty mid-cap. Surabhi standing by with the day's market action. Surabhi, best day in 4 years for our markets, clearly reacting to the calm between India and Pakistan, as well as the good news on the trade front between the US and China.
Well, a bazooka of a day by the bulls, and for the bulls, I call it the double dhamal effect on Monday. It was always going to be a great opening because of the good news that we had in terms of de-escalation between India and Pakistan over the weekend. But what added to the party was this deal and this, should I say, cessation of hostilities, trade hostilities between China and the US as well. So they've opened up a 90-day window. They will talk tariffs. And in the interim, the net tariff on China has come down from a high of 145 to just about 30%. What this did was it turbocharged asset classes around the world. Equities were roaring. The Chinese markets, the Hang Seng closed up 3%, Shanghai Composite was up 1%, Europe was up between 1 to about 1.25%, and US futures, by the time we shut, futures were up between 2 to 4%. The Nasdaq futures were up 4%. The Dow at one point in time was up a whole 1,000 points. Gold declined because the market was in a risk-off mode. So what did this mean for India? A 900-plus point rally for the Nifty, and the Nifty just kept moving higher from strength to strength, and this was a very wide and vast move. It wasn't just large caps. Look at the mid-cap index, almost 4% higher. Small caps also doing very well. The market breadth was so rock steady and solid. There were 10 stocks advancing for every one stock that was declining. So that was the nature of this move today. If you talk about the sectoral spread, then here as well, it's a broad sway of green across the board. IT stocks leading from the front. The IT index, Nifty IT, was almost about 7% higher. But the capital markets index, financials, banking, you name it, transportation stocks, for instance, Interglobe Aviation, all of them were up and away. You throw a dart and it would probably hit a rising stock. The only exception to that rule, actually, was Pharma. I'll come to that in just a bit. But let's talk about some of the Nifty winners as well. So like I said, IT was very strong. HCL Tech, TCS, Adani Enterprises, financials like Shriram Finance, Tata Steel ahead of its numbers closing up, L&T, Eternal, Reliance, you name it, all up and about. The losers, IndusInd Bank, a bit of an outlier, and Sun Pharma, which gets me back to Pharma. Tonight, the market will, await the details of this executive order that President Trump is to sign to reduce the cost of medicines for Americans, and that kind of weighed on sentiment for the pharma part of the market. But now coming back to the numbers, it's been a phenomenal comeback by the Nifty, a 14% rally from the lows, which means for the year now the Nifty is up 5%, and it's only 5% away from the all-time highs. The Nifty has rocked on. The mid-cap and the small-cap index for the year 2025 are still down 2 to 3% but for the large-cap space, it's been a rocking comeback.
Surabhi, many thanks. On to a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. Yes Bank MD and CEO Prashant Kumar says Japan Sumitomo Mitsui's plan to buy a 20% stake in the bank will give it opportunities to avail of low-cost funds and lending and fee-based income. Remember, SBI and other banks are cumulatively selling close to 20% stake to Sumitomo Mitsui for close to 13,500 crore rupees. This will be one of the largest foreign investments in an Indian private bank. The transaction is currently awaiting approvals from the RBI and the Competition Commission. The Yes Bank CEO expects the deal to be finalized in the September quarter. Take a look.
So now it would require the approvals from Reserve Bank of India and Competition Commission of India. And we are hopeful that the whole transaction would be completed in the second quarter of this financial year. Re-rating itself would give us a lot of opportunities both on funding side as well as on the lending side. We are looking for a re-rating of this. Because in the re-rating, one of the issue was always in terms of what is going to happen to the SBI stake. That is one part. The second part, that with the re-rating, okay, definitely your funding cost would also come down. Right? The third part, if such a respectable foreign institution investing in you, okay, it also gives you the mileage in terms of opening your door for a lot of other things.
Well, that is Yes Bank's Prashant Kumar. Now, India and the EU have resumed talks for the 11th round of the proposed free trade agreement. The talks are scheduled to continue until the 16th of May. Officials have said that the two sides have agreed that the agreement will be finalized in two phases. The first phase of the deal is expected to be finalized by the end of this year. We'll head into a break, but up next, there is a churn in India's 10-minute food delivery space. While Swiggy's Bolt has clearly taken the lead, Zomato has hit the pause button for now. More on that when we return. The race for 10-minute food delivery has taken a different route, with Swiggy's Bolt inching towards the finish line, whatever that finish line may be. The company's quick delivery vertical contributes to 12% of all of Swiggy's food orders. Zomato has exited the space entirely. Shilpa joins us now to decode the divergent roads being taken. So, Shilpa, what's really working for Swiggy, and why did Zomato pull the plug?
Well, like you mentioned, Swiggy and Zomato are taking very different approaches to the quick food delivery space, and the contrast couldn't be clear. Now, Swiggy has said that 10-minute food delivery service Bolt is seeing rapid growth, and it now accounts to over 12% of its food delivery orders. It's also seeing a 4 to 6% higher retention of newer users that are coming from Bolt. And on the back of this, it has expanded Bolt to over 500 cities in the country with over 45,000 restaurant partners. But here in contrast, right, Zomato during its Q4 earnings said that it is shutting down Quick, citing no clear path to profitability and inconsistent customer service. The company also said that the model did not drive incremental demand and was also logistically too tough to scale, and so it will now instead focus on bringing down the delivery time from 30 minutes to maybe 20 to 25 minutes. So what's then working for Swiggy that's not for Zomato? Well, experts that we spoke to say that Swiggy has worked out a quick delivery menu items with a very dense restaurant network, and even though the average order value is slightly lower than the platform average, the shorter delivery radius means lower delivery costs, and so the margins remain intact and they're not dilutive. Now, it also has a first mover advantage where it seems to have captured demand for quick delivery and away from Zomato. But analysts say that Bolt won't be massive. At best, it could probably peak at about 20 to 25% of food delivery order volumes. And it's helping overall volumes for Swiggy, with the food delivery GOV growth being faster than Zomato's this quarter by about 1.5%, a sign that analysts say it may be gaining market share. Now, analysts say that Zomato will instead focus on offerings like Bistro because it doesn't see quick delivery as a large enough opportunity to justify the effort that will go behind it. And that said, challenges for Swiggy remain: low order value, kitchen infra gaps, and also the cost of maintaining consistency in a high-speed model. And overcoming these will ensure that Bolt and the overall ultra-fast food delivery is a long-term win for Swiggy. Back to you.
Well, we'll have to see how this works out in the long term. But Shilpa, many thanks for joining us. Swiggy sticks to quick commerce food, but Zomato pulls the plug on it. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue here on CNBC TV 18. Stay tuned. Remember the Prime Minister's address coming up at 8 p.m. tonight. CNBC TV 18 will broadcast the same for you.